All right. Thank you for joining us today. We very much appreciate you coming here for our necessary destruction webinar. We have with us today Rob Grubaugh, Laura Daly, and John Daly from Royal Document Destruction. And real quick, they're going to be having a destruction event this Saturday from 8 till noon at their shop. There's a suggested donation, but it's real quick. You drive through, you drop your stuff off to destroy, and you're sent on your way. So we hope you make some time on Saturday morning to help clear out your closets and desk drawers. Now, without further ado, we'll get this started. If you could either put questions in the chat box or question box, or save them till the end and raise your hand and we'll work from there. All right. So I will mute myself, and how you guys can go ahead and introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Great. Thank you again for joining. I'm Laura Daly with Royal Document Destruction, and we're looking forward to speaking to you today. And thanks for the plug for Saturday's event. It goes to Crime Stoppers, so we're really excited to be partnering with them for Saturday. So next slide. The outline for today, what we're going to talk about is a little bit of our company history, so you know what your services or things you should look for in a professional shredding company, why and when to shred your documents, the legal obligations, time guidelines for storage, things like that, the benefits of outsourcing your business shredding to a professional provider, and also the importance of hiring a NADE certified provider for your peace of mind. NADE stands for the National Association for Information Destruction. They're the overseeing body of our industry, and that NADE certification really does make a difference when you're looking for a provider. Next slide. So Royal Document Destruction is a family-owned shredding company. We are headquartered in Columbus, Ohio, and we have a second facility in Cincinnati, Ohio. And we have been providing certified secure shredding services since 1995. So when we started our business, we actually had to explain to companies why they should shred their documents. And so things have changed a lot in the 27 years we've been in business. In 2002, we were the first company in Ohio to be NADE certified by the state, and we've also maintained that certification since that time. We have been on the Inc. 5000 list 3 different times, and the Central Ohio Fast 50 list 6 times. And the reason I bring that up is I think it speaks to the professionalism and dedication and experience that we have in handling businesses and individuals' sensitive documents, and the success we've had over the years, and the integrity with which we do it with. Next slide. So when you hire a professional shredding company, there's really 2 different kinds of service that they offer. They have plant-based shredding and mobile shredding. So on the next slide, it'll show you a picture of our plants. When you hire someone for plant-based shredding or off-site, the containers come to your facility, and then we switch them out. The driver brings the empties, we bring back the full ones, and they shred them in our facility. Trying to get to that next slide here. And then for mobile shredding or on-site shredding, we have the truck that comes out to the facility, picks up the container, shreds it all on site there, and you get the empty container right at that moment. So both on-site or mobile shredding or off-site shredding, they're both certified. You can use either service for file purge or regular service. And importantly, both services are completely certified through NADE. Our plant-based off-site shredding, we actually offer cross-cut, so it goes through 2 complete shreds. So we do typically encourage people to think about the plant-based or off-site shredding because it's more economical, so it's better for the customer. We also offer drop-off service, which a lot of people take advantage of, and mostly individuals will just bring in their documents at a convenient time. They keep everything, and They bring it to our facility. We offer drop-off shredding most days between 8 and 3. So people bring it in, they pay a standard fee, and we shred everything, and then they know that nothing is, it's all going to get recycled as well. Next slide. Some additional services that we offer include hard drive destruction, which we also do on or off site. We also offer serial number capturing with the hard drive destruction if that's required. And we do product destruction. And product destruction is great for obsolete product, damaged materials, clothing, point of purchase materials, anything with a logo on it. Basically, it ensures brand protection and integrity. So it's really important, and we do offer that as well to our customers. And then for the electronic recycling, we do old computers, basically. So for the hard drive destruction, the only thing I would really recommend is to not wipe your hard drive when you're done with it, to actually have it destroyed, because professional criminals can retrieve that wiped information off it. There is ways to do that. So that's why we encourage people to do the certified destruction of their hard drives as well. Next slide. I think I'm handing it over to John Daly now.
Thanks, Laura. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Daly. I am one of the founders of Royal Document Destruction and its current president. I think Laura mentioned we've been in business, and I've been with the company for 27 years now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, first of all, why shred. And before I do that, I want to reiterate a comment earlier. Feel free to ask any questions you want to ask. Now, that can be today during the webinar, or if you think of a question that you have after the webinar, today, tonight, tomorrow, please feel free to give us a call, contact us. We'd be happy to help you with any questions that you might have, and we'd love to see you guys out there on Saturday. We are doing a big event for the Crime Stoppers. Your donation that you make, I believe it is a $10 minimum. You get up to 5 boxes to shred for $10, and that donation goes 100% to Crime Stoppers. The first slide, I think, is one back, Jessica, if that's possible. And if not, I can wing it. Oh, maybe it's, nope, one forward. Okay. Anyway, let's start with why to shred. So when we started this company 27 years ago, we had to actually explain quite a bit as to why it was so important to shred. Today, that's not really the case. It's not, everyone kind of understands the need to shred, so I'm just going to go over a few of the finer points. Probably the biggest reason is identity theft is, if not the fastest, one of the fastest growing crimes in the country. It is the biggest problem that you're going to have with an identity theft situation is, unlike a lot of other crimes, it's not something you know about right away. For example, if someone steals your car, you're going to know pretty quickly that your car is missing. However, if someone steals your identity in 90 days for you to even realize that the damage has been done, and now you're really paying catch up to try to recapture your good name, your reputation, and whatever financial damage has been done. So identity theft is a big problem from that perspective, for sure. The other reason for why you want to shred is company information, confidentiality, payroll records, employee discipline records. Those type of things are obviously very confidential. Don't want to be out in the general public, or even something that's exposed within your offices. Also, criminals, when they do perform or get away with identity theft, they only need couple of pieces of information. It's very little information they need to perform identity theft. It can be your name and your social security number. It can be your name and your driver's license, or your social security number and your driver's license, or your insurance card and your social security number. Any combination of just 2 pieces of information, you can have your identity theft stolen. The other reason why you want to make sure you shred is it's the law. You can see there we've got 3 different laws listed: HIPAA, Gramm-Leach-Bliley, and FACTA. Those have all been around about 20 years. HIPAA is related to health insurance, medical coverage, that type of thing. Gramm-Leach-Bliley is primarily related to the financial industry, so thinking of banks, insurance companies, anything financial. And FACTA, Fair and Accurate Credit Transaction Act, relates more to any kind of company that holds consumer information, which encompasses a lot of organizations out there. The laws are all different. They're long and long-winded, and they have a certain section in each of them about proper disposal. What they have in common as it relates to all these laws is there's always going to be a reasonableness test. So if you are the data controller at your firm, did you perform the selection of your vendor reasonably? Did you do due diligence on the vendor? Did you determine, how long they were in business? Are they certified? Did you do a site visit? Things like that prove that you've done your due diligence in selecting the right vendor. The other thing that needs to be done that is common to all these laws is you need to have your employees trained. Having your employees trained is not a complicated process. It can be as simple as a 1-page document and maybe a short video that they watch that lets them know what your policies and procedures are for proper document destruction within your company. What is important to point out here is that none of these laws, HIPAA, Gramm-Leach-Bliley, FACTA, none of them require on-site versus off-site. Essentially, it boils down to if you've done a good job of selecting the proper vendor and they are properly certified by the National Association of Information Destruction, the choice of whether you do it on-site or off-site is secondary. But from a data controller standpoint, you just want to be able to justify what your decision was and how you reached that decision. Now, your worst case scenario, your nightmare scenario is you're involved in a deposition or you're a witness to give testimony at a trial, or perhaps you're on the news, you're being quoted for an article. What you want to be able to do if you were ever put in that position as a data controller is you need to be able to justify what you did, how you selected the vendor, and why you did it. And because in the grand scheme of things, you're never going to be able to control and protect 100% of your documents. You just want to have a procedure in place so you can justify how you acted and what your company did. And the reason I say you'll never be able to control 100% of it, you can have the best document destruction program there is. The problem that you're going to have, and it's just, especially acute now with people that are working from home, you're never going to be able to control that environment 100%. There's still people going to airports and hotels, and there's opportunities for documents to get out of your net, so to speak, that you set up at your company that you cannot control. So you want to have the best procedures you can in place. You want to have properly selected vendor, but ultimately you're never able to control 100% of the documents at your company. Also on the Y-Shred side, public image. A lot of people don't know this, but dumpster diving is not illegal, and that's true for all 50 states. So if you put something out in the trash, there is no reasonable expectation of privacy that's granted by the courts. So in other words, if you treat it like trash, then you've lost all rights to any kind of privacy that you might think you have. So dumpster diving is probably the most common way that identity theft is stolen when it's physical information. Obviously, there's an opportunity, electronic information theft. I think there was a cybersecurity program yesterday, but on physical theft of hard documents, dumpster diving is the #1 way, and it's not even illegal. So if you're not taking proper care of your documents and if you're not doing proper disposal, then you are going to be subject to the possibility of that type of theft. Next slide, please. The last thing we have on this part of it is we do not recommend doing it yourself. The cost of shredding yourself is generally more expensive than outsourcing. And you come up with that pretty easily based on the monthly fee that we might charge or one of our competitors might charge versus your costs as a company to buy a shredder and then pay an employee to go through what is a fairly slow process in shredding all the documents that you might have in a given week. The other problem that you have in terms of doing it by yourself is personal shredders typically don't get used. The job is typically delegated to an intern or someone that's fairly low on the totem pole, so to speak. The paper can stack up. Maybe the plan is to get it done every Friday afternoon, and for some reason the intern's not in on Friday afternoon. It doesn't get done. It waits another week. For some reason, it doesn't get done that week, and then all of a sudden you have an exposure situation because when you have a shredder, typically the storage of documents is not secure. It's not in a locking container. It's usually just set in a pile by the shredder, and that exposes those documents in between shreds to some kind of theft, not necessarily outside the company, but within the company. Payroll records, employee discipline records, that type of thing. Shredded paper, again, that's done with a home shredder, even a small office shredder, is also an invitation to dumpster divers, like we talked. So typically the home shredder has a bag, and it's typically a clear bag, and that bag is just placed in a dumpster. And by doing that, you're basically telling the quote unquote bad guys where the good information is. And there is software out there now where if you have a small quantity of documents that even if they have been shredded, there's software out there now that can put that document back together. The advantage of working with a large industrial type shredder, whether it's us or one of our competitors, is we are going to recycle everything. So we will make, I'm trying to figure out, probably, oh gosh, 40 or 50 bales of paper. Each bale can weigh 1,500 pounds. We're going to make that much paper on a daily basis. So your documents at 40 or 50 pounds get all mixed up with everyone else's documents that we've picked up. Now we may pick up 100 to 120 different customers a day. So again, your documents, if they were with us, would get intermixed and intermingled with those 100 to 120 other customers. So the chance of piecing anything back together after it's been through that mix and everything gets shredded together and everything gets baled together, putting it back together is not something that's even reasonably possible, versus a dumpster diver situation where you have that bag of just that information. It's all sitting right there. Next slide, please. A couple other things on the don't do it yourself items. The employees should not be handling sensitive information. Like I said, typically that job is delegated to the intern. And if you think about it, the only person that really should be destroying the documents is going to be the CEO, the president, or someone really high up like that at the organization. And that's probably not practical. It's kind of absurd to think that the president of the organization is going to spend 2 hours on a Friday afternoon shredding the documents, when in fact that's probably the only person that's would be allowed or privy to see that type of information. So when you have lower level employees handling that sensitive information, I think you're exposing yourself to some liability there. Secondly, when you shred yourself, you have no record of compliance. So when you work with a certified NAID vendor, not only are you going to get an invoice every month, which is obvious, you're also going to get a certificate of destruction, which proves that you had a regular and routine service. Typically, our customers run once a month. There are other service frequencies, but typically it's once a month. So you're going to have an invoice and a certificate of destruction that shows every month and 12 months a year that you've properly destroyed your documents, and that is a great record of compliance should you get into any kind of privacy violation, a legal situation, etc. Versus a office shredder where it may or may not have been done every Friday. So the documentation is significantly better. The other thing you find with office shredders, they're not reliable. They're going to be smaller. They can't do a large volume. They tend to break down frequently, and they can't handle paper clips, binder clips, rubber bands, staples, that type of thing, which large industrial shredders can handle. Next slide, please. Last thing that we're going to go over, or I'm going to go over before I turn it over to Rob, is the records retention guidelines. And this might be a good reference for you to keep. I'm not going to read it all to you. It's pretty self-explanatory. What the takeaway, in my opinion, is number one, that this is not legal guidance. This is our opinion. If you have some specific questions, you should probably consult your legal counsel. But you can see on here, there's a few items that you should be discarding and properly disposing of on a regular basis, being kept less than a year. You've got some financial records that you may want to be keeping for 3 years. When you get into tax records, that's typically 4 to 7 years. Tax records, the IRS is allowed to go back and audit you for any of the last 3 tax years. So that's why it's typically known as 4. So you have that one buffer year because it's April 15th of the next year before you pay your taxes. The point there is also, or it should be pointed out, I should say, the IRS can go back and audit you indefinitely if there's fraud. So if you have any kind of fraudulent situation with your taxes, you definitely don't want to be getting rid of those because they can go back and audit you as far back as they want. If you don't have any kind of fraud, then you don't need to worry about it. Loan documents, you want to keep those so those are paid off. And then at the bottom, you can see some kind of more permanent things that you want to keep indefinitely. If there's any questions on records retention, like I said, consult your attorney, but we'd be happy to help out with any basic questions in that area. With that, I will turn it over to Rob Grubaugh, Vice President of Sales.
Thanks, John. So yeah, like John said, I have been with Royal Document Destruction for 11 years now. Handle the sales both here at the Columbus office and down in the Cincinnati office. And I'm going to talk a little more about NAID. So if you can go to the next slide. What NAID is, you've heard John and Laura both mention that as they've done their presentation. NAID stands for the National Association for Information Destruction. Recently, they've rebranded to something called ISIGMA, another long word that has a bunch of different meanings. But anyhow, most people still refer to it as NAID in the marketplace. Most people we talk to still use NAID. ISIGMA may be coming down the line. So just those two are kind of interchangeable. Just put that out there for you guys. But what NAID is it's a international trade association, and they govern the document shredding industry. So they're kind of what they call themselves the watchdog. So as we talk about NAID, I know Laura mentioned it. It's been around since about the mid-90s, 1995. It really started to take hold. We were the first company, shredding company in Ohio to be certified in 2002. And then shortly after we opened the Cincinnati location, it became certified as well. So if you have multiple locations, like we do with 2 locations, Columbus, Cincinnati, both have to go through NAID certification. Both have to have the annual audits, unannounced audits, which I'll get into more here in a second. Yeah, so that's the basics in NAID. As we go to the next slide, Jessica, the one thing I always point out to people who are interested in doing document shredding is if you choose us, if you choose a competitor, the #1 most important thing to look at is make sure they are NAID certified. Basically, that shows that there's a third party, again, back to that watchdog, that makes sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing to keep your information safe, both professionally and personally. So kind of the 10,000-foot view on what NAID certification is. It's a large packet that we go through, obviously, when you first get certified, and then every year there's a recertification. The most important thing, I think, when you think of NAID certification is the audits. So they do announced audits, and those can be yearly, every other year. But the key thing that they have is what's called unannounced audits. They use a third-party auditors that come in that have security backgrounds. So these might be people that worked for security from a federal government level, stuff like that, that they will do these audits. And they are completely unannounced. I can tell you that the last one we had, I was coming back from lunch and I walked into the door the same time with the auditor, and we had an unannounced audit. So I think it's a good thing, because for people in the industry that do it right, there should be no problem with an unannounced audit. So I think it's a great benefit to make sure that all shredding companies that are NAID certified are checking those boxes and doing what's right, because that leads back to you know, the customer's personal information that we are keeping safe and secure. Like I mentioned before, both Columbus and Cincinnati locations are certified, and we are certified for both mobile shredding and the plant-based shredding. So going back to Laura's previous slide, she mentioned on-site and off-site. There's many interchangeable words for that, but both your plant-based system and if you do shredding in trucks, on the mobile trucks, need to be certified as well. So both the Columbus and Cincinnati locations check all of those boxes for said customer. Next slide, Jessica. So some of the areas that NAID concentrates on, this is just a snapshot of what they look at, but obviously operational security. So all of our facilities have cameras, CCTVs, you know, that we have to keep recordings for a minimum of 90 days, and that's in all operational areas of the facility. They also are very big on the employee hiring and screening. Obviously, anybody can say they shred paper. You could have you know, I always say Jimbo shredding that just got out of prison a month ago, shredding in the back of his truck. He can say he is a shredder, and he's shredding paper. One of the things we have to do with NAID is we have to do background checks, drug screens, not only pre-employment, but ongoing during employment. So it's a way to make sure that the people that are handling your secure documents are to the highest standards. They also look at the destruction process in general. So this can be anything from the shred size to how are you staging the documents, how long are you staging. There's timelines that NAID goes through of how long things need to be shredded once they come into your possession. So that's all part of the NAID certification. They also get into responsible disposal. That goes back to John, his comment about after we shred your documents, they are going to a paper mill to be recycled. So they're going to be pulped down, made back into paper products that we use every day, mostly from a post-secondary consumer market, so hotels, schools, sporting events. That's kind of what the material we get after it's been processed down gets put back into. So obviously the recycling is a nice bonus, but they want to make sure that's getting the final product is somebody who's going to dispose of it all the way, and it's not going to get back out into the public. And obviously insurance standards. NAID has very high insurance standards, which they make their NAID certified companies abide by. So that's another part of the certification. Next slide. So I mentioned, I'll just touch base on this real quick. We mentioned recycling. Obviously with what we do, the end product after destruction does get recycled. This is a little fun fact sheet that kind of goes into what happens when you recycle a ton of paper. This is based on EPA figures. So the ones that kind of stand out there are the 17 trees. So for every 1 ton of paper that gets recycled, it saves 17 trees from being cut down to be made into those products that 1 ton of paper can do. So kind of some good information there. Next slide. So as we kind of summarize here, we kind of mentioned there's 5 key points that you can take away from this. And, you know, if you look at one of them or if you look at all 5 of them, just something to jot down, make sure that these boxes are checked, or at least you looked into them. So, you know, it goes into NAID certification. John mentioned the records retention guidelines, make sure you know that. One thing I would say is don't do it yourself. You're just asking for problems. It's going to get backed up, and you're going to probably end up calling a company like us anyways to kind of get you out of the backup of paper. Know the regulations that affect your business and know what you need to do to check those boxes. And then the last one, you know, most people do it yourself because you think this is a very expensive process. It really doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be expensive. It doesn't need to be painful. Check with your experts. Check with people like us or other people in the industry that are NAID certified, and let them help you create that records management program to make your life easier and safer. So I think we have one last slide for any questions that anybody may have.
And for those who can't quite see it, you can contact Rob at rddshred.com. Phone number 614-595-3638. So fantastic information and so many things that you kind of think about, but it doesn't hit you in the face until someone states it plain. And thank you for bringing that to us. If we were to wrap up, and Rob, you already kind of hit on it, what would be the one thing that you wish everybody knew that they trip over on a regular basis? Rob, you said don't do it yourself.
Yeah, I would say my two big things are A, don't do it yourself, and then if you are using a company to help you with this, just make sure they're NAIDS certified. Make sure that box is checked, and that will save you potentially a lot of headaches in the future.
Laura, do you have closing thoughts?
We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
I think what's important to realize is whether you're an individual or working for a business, everyone is a target for information identity theft. So if you're worried about your personal documents at home, worry about your documents at work, but we have solutions that really can help anyone, but you're not safe if you just work for a small business or you work for yourself. Everyone needs to be aware of this information.
Absolutely. Good thoughts. And John, do you have any closing thoughts to add icing on Laura and Rob?
Yeah, I do, Jessica. Thank you. Just to kind of reiterate on the records retention guidelines, the other side of that is to have some sort of policy around that. What you don't want to do is save documents and records indefinitely. Number one, there's a cost to it of whether you're working with a vendor or doing it yourself. There's still some cost to storing documents that you don't need to be storing. But secondly, you're creating a liability for yourself. If you've got documents that can be shredded and should be shredded, there's no reason not to get those shredded and just take away any kind of liability that might be in those documents that you don't want to have come out in a discovery situation. The other thing I would add is it's best to have a policy to shred everything. You really don't want your employees you want to have guidelines on what's confidential and what might not be, but there's always going to be a gray area. And do you really want your employees of all levels making that decision as to what is confidential and what is not? Because they could make a mistake, and they could also make a mistake in knowing that something is confidential, but yet forget to put it in the right bin. So instead of, they know they have a confidential document in their hands and they forget to put it in the shred bin and somehow end up in the trash. Excuse me. So a situation like that is something definitely want to avoid.
Excellent food for thought. Thank you all for joining us today. And again, Royal Document Destruction is an accredited Better Business Bureau business. We thank you so much, and we're glad you're in our BBB family. I'm Jessica Hamlin. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.